What if your quiet nights were shattered by a figure who struck fear into the hearts of an entire city? Imagine going to bed, feeling safe, only to wake up knowing that a monster was lurking in the shadows. In the mid-1980s, Los Angeles was gripped by terror. A series of brutal attacks sent the community into a panic. People started locking their doors and avoiding the streets at night. Fear became a part of everyday life, as whispers of a killer grew louder. This man was not just any criminal, he was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. His reign of terror was marked by violence, chaos, and a chilling disregard for human life. As his crimes unfolded, they would leave a lasting scar on the community and change the way people viewed safety forever. Join us as we delve into the chilling story of Richard Ramirez, exploring how one individual could instill such fear and alter the fabric of a city. Richard Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. From the very beginning, his life was marked by turmoil. He grew up in a troubled family where violence and abuse were common. This environment had a profound impact on him. As a child, Richard witnessed his older cousin, who was a soldier in Vietnam, commit acts of violence. These experiences left a lasting impression and introduced him to a world of brutality at a young age. As he grew older, he became increasingly drawn to dark and disturbing interests. By his teenage years, Ramirez was heavily involved in drugs and had begun to engage in criminal behavior. His early life set the stage for a path that would lead him to become one of America's most infamous serial killers. This troubled past would shape his actions and ultimately define his legacy as the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez's childhood was filled with trauma and violence. One of the most significant influences in his early life was his older cousin, a Vietnam War veteran. This cousin often boasted about the brutal acts he had committed during the war, even showing Ramirez graphic photos of the violence. These stories and images deeply affected the young Richard and fueled his growing fascination with death and destruction. By the time Ramirez was a teenager, he had already begun to embrace a dark path. His obsession with violence, combined with heavy drug use, led him down a road from which he would never return. His first known attack occurred in April 1984. In Rosemead, California, he broke into a home, assaulted, and murdered a woman in a brutal fashion. This horrific act was only the beginning of a reign of terror that would soon spread across Los Angeles and beyond. With this attack, Ramirez's violent spree was set in motion, and the city would soon come to know him as the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez's method of operation, or modus operandi, was as chilling as it was unpredictable. Unlike many other serial killers, he did not follow a specific pattern or have a particular type of victim. He targeted both men and women, young and old, and from various backgrounds. His attacks were random, making it nearly impossible for the police to predict his next move. Ramirez would often break into homes during the night, while his victims were asleep, adding another layer of terror. He used various weapons, including guns, knives, and blunt objects, depending on what was available or what he chose to bring with him. His violent nature knew no bounds, and he frequently assaulted his victims before or after killing them. What made his crimes even more terrifying was the lack of any clear motive beyond sheer brutality. Communities across Los Angeles were left in a state of fear and uncertainty, knowing that anyone could be his next target. Richard Ramirez's horrific crimes were not only marked by violence, but also by his disturbing fascination with Satanism. He often claimed to be acting under the influence of Satan, which added a chilling layer to his already brutal acts. In several of his crime scenes, Ramirez left behind satanic symbols, like pentagrams, as a message to law enforcement and society. He even forced some of his victims to swear allegiance to Satan during his attacks. His open worship of the devil shocked the public, and this aspect of his crimes grabbed the media's attention, turning him into a figure of both terror and fascination. Ramirez's use of Satanism fueled the panic around his crimes, making him seem like more than just a serial killer, but a man driven by dark, supernatural forces. This added to the fear and chaos he inflicted on the city. As Richard Ramirez's violent spree continued, the city of Los Angeles was gripped by fear. His attacks were random, unpredictable, and brutal, targeting people in their own homes. The very place where people felt safest had become a hunting ground for the Night Stalker. With every new attack, the sense of panic spread further. Women stopped going out after dark, and families began installing extra locks, security systems, and even sleeping with weapons nearby. No one knew where or when Ramirez would strike next, and this uncertainty caused widespread terror. The media quickly labelled him the Night Stalker, a name that fueled the fear even more. News reports detailed his horrifying crimes daily, making him a figure of dread throughout Southern California. The public lived in constant fear of the Night Stalker, unsure of who would be his next victim. Law enforcement was in a race against time to stop the Night Stalker before he could strike again. The LAPD formed specialized task forces, coordinated with other agencies, and organized neighborhood watch programs to catch the elusive killer. Despite their efforts, Richard Ramirez remained careful, leaving little evidence behind and disappearing into the night after each attack. The police urged the public to stay vigilant and report anything suspicious. Frustration grew as Ramirez continued to slip through their fingers, seemingly able to vanish without a trace after every brutal crime. At the same time, the media's sensational coverage of the case turned Ramirez into a household name. Headlines screamed about his horrific acts, and the fear of the Night Stalker grew with each report. The intense media frenzy only added to his notoriety, captivating a public both horrified and fascinated by the relentless killer. Richard Ramirez's crimes were marked by unique and terrifying details. Each attack had its own gruesome elements, but investigators began to notice a pattern: his violent methods and brutal signatures. Ramirez often struck in pairs, attacking his victims with extreme force and leaving behind unmistakable signs of violence. This horrific pattern soon became a critical focus for detectives trying to piece together his crimes. The case took a turning point when a witness came forward with vital information. They had seen a suspicious man near one of the crime scenes, and their description led to police sketches of the suspect. This provided law enforcement with a clearer profile of the Night Stalker, finally offering a glimmer of hope that they were getting closer to catching him. On August 31st, 1985, Richard Ramirez's reign of terror came to an end. After being recognized by a group of people in an East Los Angeles neighborhood, he was chased down by civilians. The community, tired of living in fear, took action. They detained him until the police arrived to make the arrest. His capture brought a sense of relief to Los Angeles, which had been gripped by terror for months. In 1988, Ramirez's trial began, drawing immense national attention. The courtroom was packed with reporters, survivors, and the families of his victims. It became a spectacle, with each day revealing more about the brutality of his crimes and the horrors he had inflicted on so many. Richard Ramirez's defense team argued that he should be found not guilty due to mental illness. They claimed that his violent actions were the result of a lack of control, hoping this would sway the jury. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Witness testimonies, forensic evidence, and his disturbing behavior painted a very different picture. In 1989, the jury found Ramirez guilty of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, and 11 sexual assaults. He was sentenced to death. Despite the verdict, legal appeals and delays stretched out the process for years, leaving the families of his victims waiting for justice. Richard Ramirez spent over 2 decades on death row. During this time, he attracted a strange kind of fame. People fascinated by his dark persona sent him fan mail, and he received attention from those intrigued by his crimes. Despite the grim circumstances, Ramirez maintained an almost cult-like status from behind bars. His reign of terror left a lasting mark on Los Angeles. The fear he spread led to changes in public safety and heightened security measures across the city. Law enforcement also shifted its approach to investigating serial crimes, ensuring that future threats would be met with more vigilance. Even years after Richard Ramirez was captured, his legacy of fear still haunted Los Angeles. His name became a symbol of terror and violence, a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the shadows. The trauma he caused continues to echo in the memories of the city's residents. Ramirez's story has been portrayed in films, documentaries, and TV shows, ensuring that his dark legacy remains a part of popular culture. These adaptations have sparked ongoing interest and debate, keeping the Night Stalker story alive in the public consciousness. At last, Richard Ramirez's horrific crimes and the fear he spread continue to resonate while he was sentenced to death. The mystery and fascination surrounding his life and actions have ensured that he remains a haunting figure in true crime history. The story of the Night Stalker serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can exist in the world. Even as time passes, the impact of his actions lingers, leaving an indelible mark on the community and shaping how we view safety and security. And with that said, thanks for watching True Stories. If this tale of mystery and superstition caught your interest, hit that subscribe button to join us for more fascinating stories from history's strangest corners. Until next time, stay curious.